Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, the best place to be wherever you are on your wealth journey right now. Today I want to talk about how we use our credit cards. Many of us don't know how to use a credit card properly. It's not something we're taught about in schools, and we just have to kind of feel our way and work out how we're supposed to use our cards. So I wanted to give you some tips and some pointers to show you how you can stay in control of your credit. Now I will put a disclaimer in here guys, because nothing that I'm about to say is financial advice at all. This is all just education and information only. I'm going to show you how I do it, but obviously you can decide for yourself whether you'd like to do what I do, or you might have a different way of working through your credit cards. One thing I will say though is please do not get yourself into any kind of debt unless you know for certain that you can service that debt. Otherwise you're just going to end up losing your shirt, and that will be really bad for everybody. So please don't get into debt if you can help it. So credit cards then, they seem like quite innocent and innocuous little pieces of plastic, but the way that we think about credit cards can vary very much depending on what our experience has been so far. Let's start with the basics then. What exactly is a credit card? Well, it's like a mini loan. So for example, if I were to go to a bank and take out a bank loan, it would normally be for something quite large, like a deposit for a car or a wedding or something really big, home improvements perhaps. But if I have a credit card, it's like taking a little mini loan, which is why people often use it for things like clothes shopping, holiday deposits and that kind of thing, because it's a much smaller animal. One thing I will say though is please don't confuse your credit card with your debit card. They are two completely different things. When you spend on a debit card, that takes money out of your bank account, money that you've already earned and that you've put into your bank account. When you spend on a credit card, it is extra borrowing, so you're going to need to think about how you're going to pay that borrowing back. Okay, let's think about the pros and cons of taking out a credit card then. Firstly, the cons. Obviously, some of us are worried that if we have a credit card, we're going to get into bad debt and we're going to run up huge bills and then have all sorts of problems trying to pay everything back. The last thing we want is a bad debt situation, and believe me, I understand if that's you because I've been there and you've probably seen the video that I did about my bad debt situation. The thing is though, you'll only get into a bad debt situation if you lose control of your card and your spending. So I want to show you how to take control so that you can have a card and feel more confident about how it all works. Other cons with a credit card are that interest rates might be quite expensive on your card, and also your card issuer may charge you a fee, either for taking the card out or for doing balance transfers as well. What about the pros of having a credit card then? Surely there are some good things about it. Well, yes, absolutely there are. For example, you've got the money there in an emergency. So if your roof leaks and suddenly you have to deal with that, you've got some money on your credit card that you can immediately draw upon so that you haven't got to worry about a flooded house, for example. The other good thing about having credit cards is that it actually improves your credit score, because it shows the card lender that you can borrow money and pay it back on time. And over time that will improve your score. I did a whole video on credit score and credit rating and why those things are important and how to improve them up here. So have a watch of that one if you're interested in improving your score. So whether you feel cards are good or bad, you're going to fall into one of 5 different categories when it comes to using your card. Now as I go through these, see if you can work out which one is you. So category number 1 are people that have no cards whatsoever. They've never had a credit card, either because they don't feel confident or because their mum or dad has told them don't borrow money. So they've just not bothered. And that's quite sensible really, because if you don't have a credit card, you can't get into trouble. Hurrah! Category 2. Some people might have a credit card, but then keep it in their desk drawer and never think about it ever again, because they don't want to spend on it, it's not in their purse, they can't accidentally spend it on sparkly shoes and handbags, and then they can't get into trouble because it's over there. And again, that's fairly sensible from a not getting into trouble point of view. Category 3. Some people spend on their card and then pay it off in full every single month. And again, that's very sensible. A lot of people do that because they know that by spending on their card and paying it off in full, it means they won't incur any high interest charges. Category number 4. You might have a card, spend on it and then not pay it off in full every single month. And of course, unless your card is on 0%, that is going to cause you problems in the long term, because you're going to have not only the borrowing that you've borrowed on the card that you've got to think about repaying, but you've also got high interest charges as well. So again, if that's you, you might want to consider your exit strategy at this point. How are you going to pay it off? Category 5. It might be that you have spent some money on your card, you've not paid it back every single month, but you're on a 0% credit card deal, which means that your monthly minimum payment is paying off part of the balance every single month of this card, and then at the end of your 0%, if you're incredibly savvy, you will do what we call a balance transfer, which is where you get another card and pay off the original card using the new card. So that could be something that you might do. This is often referred to as the credit card shuffle. Of course, there's no right or wrong way to use your card. All of these things that I've just talked about, the 5 categories, are quite normal. But if you are in one of the categories where you're not paying your cards off, you really do want to consider how you're going to do that. I would also say, please make sure you set up a direct debit to pay the monthly minimum payment on your card every single month. If you haven't got a direct debit in place and you're trying to remember, at some point you're probably going to forget, and that will leave a black mark on your credit file if your payment is late. So make sure you've got your direct debit set up. Let's talk then about how credit card companies actually make their money, because they make their money in a couple of different ways. The first way that a credit card company makes its money is by charging you a fee for taking out the card or doing the balance transfer in the first place. And that fee is normally a percentage of the amount that you're borrowing. So let's say, for example, you're getting a credit card and it's 0% for a certain number of months, but it has a 4% fee for doing a balance transfer, then you really want to factor that in, because it might be that you can get a cheaper loan somewhere else rather than paying that 4% fee. The second way the credit card company likes to make their money is a little bit more sneaky. In fact, some would probably say it's a little bit naughty of the credit card company. And what they do is this. Let's say we have a 0% credit card, for example. After the 0% rate finishes, let's say it's 18 months or 20 months, something like that, after it finishes, it will go back to what we call a standard variable rate. All the rates will differ depending on the different cards that you have and even just who you are. Very, very few people actually pay a standard rate on a credit card. But the average interest rate on a card is 18%, which is very high. I have seen some cards as high as 37%, which is ridiculous. Those cards are generally for people who've got bad credit and things like that. But 18% is the average. So let's say, for example, we take out a 0% card and it reverts to 18% after 20 months, for example. The credit card companies bank on us forgetting when our 0% rate finishes. And of course, then when it finishes, it hikes right back up to the 18% again. So it's a little bit naughty of the credit card companies to do that. But this is why whenever you take out a credit card, it will never be for a standard 12 months. I mean, for example, if I took out a card today and it said 12 months, 0%, I would know with 100% certainty that next October I would already be able to transfer my balance. However, if my card is 20 months, for example, if your maths is anything like mine, of course we have no idea what month that will be. So the credit card companies quite literally bank on us forgetting when that 0% rate finishes. And this is why it's really, really important to know exactly what your card is and manage it like a business. It will come as absolutely no surprise to those of you who have watched my previous videos that I have a spreadsheet for this. So let's have a look. Okay, so this is my credit card spreadsheet, and firstly we can see down the left-hand side I've got a list of all my cards and my credit limits. The card limit is how much is available on the card, not how much I've actually spent so far. Now you can see I've got a pretty big credit facility, and this is something that comes with time, experience and having a good credit score. Then I've written in the monthly percentage payment. Now different cards do different things here, but if we take the top one, Barclay card, as an example, they like the minimum payment to be 2% of the balance. Whereas MBNA, the one underneath, for example, are happy for you to pay 1% of the balance as a minimum per month. So again, it's worth thinking about that when you take out your card, because one is going to be more expensive than the other, even though your borrowing might be quite similar. Remember that although you're paying 1%, if your card is at 0, that's 1% coming off the balance per month. If you're paying higher interest on the card, the 1% payment will mostly be interest and the rest will be repayment, which is why it's in your best interest to get yourself a new 0% deal where possible when it goes back to that standard rate. I've then got a column showing what the minimum payment is, so when I get my statement I can put that amount in there. Now your minimum payment may vary as the balance on your card goes down, or you might agree with your card issuer to pay a fixed amount per month, which should help the balance go down even faster. Then I have the payment date. It's very important to know when this is, especially if you're being paid at a certain time of the month. It's important to know when that amount will be taken from your bank account. So again, make sure you've got your direct debit set up. Next, I have a column for when I last used my card. Again, you want to keep an eye on this, as credit card companies can be very naughty facility and cancel your card if you haven't used it for at least a year. So to avoid accidentally losing your credit card facility, I recommend you put this column in, and then if it becomes close to a year when you've not used it, just quickly buy a tank of petrol or some grocery shopping, pay it off in full, and it will show the card company that you're still using that card. Then I have 0% until when. So as we've just discussed, this is really, really important so that we don't forget and end up on a high variable rate. If you've got another kind of deal, let's say it might be 6% for 6 months or something like that, and you know you're on a special deal or a special rate, make sure you put that in your spreadsheet as well. It doesn't just have to be 0% that goes in here. The last column on my spreadsheet is the outstanding balance. So how much do I actually owe on my credit cards? You can see from mine that I don't owe very much at all on my cards anymore. I've just got one outstanding at the moment that I used on a recent refurb of a property. And actually, I will say as well that the cards that I've listed here are not the ones that I have through a company. My company credit cards are all in a separate spreadsheet, so I don't get them muddled up with my personal ones. I'm just using the personal ones today because we're talking about personal finance rather than business finance. But with your business cards, it basically works in exactly the same way. So make sure you have your spreadsheet set up for those as well. So hopefully you can see how easy it is to create a spreadsheet with your credit cards in it. If you use exactly the same columns that I've used, it will stand you in very good stead. Then you want to refer to your spreadsheet as often as possible, normally at least once a month, just to make sure that everything's on track and that you're in control of everything. So I do hope you found this video useful as a beginner starter to credit cards. There's plenty more to say on credit cards, so this probably won't be my last video on credit cards, but if you have any questions about them, just pop them in the comments underneath, and it may be that your comment results in another video that I create about credit cards as well. Do give me a thumbs up as well if you've enjoyed this video today, and don't forget to watch these 2 videos up next because they will definitely help with your wealth journey. Subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done that yet, and in the meantime guys, thanks ever so much for watching this one. Have a great week, a great Halloween, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.